I think that's what I was, when I was talking about the staff did a nice job, that's where I was going, which is if the city's committed to provide part of that, they provide the difference in that.
Well, Joe, I'd just like to reiterate my concern as far as the residential district that borders the central business district, because I see the impacts that other schools in the area have on the residential district, and that's a real concern. It's a concern for safety. It's a concern for snow plowing. It's
So would that be your rationale for adding more than the report, is because this is not taking into consideration the adjacent impact on the residential side of that northeast side?
That would be part of it. My biggest, I'd say my biggest criteria that I could use is that if the facility was located, I don't know if it's a block or half a block, but if it was located slightly to the north, the impact would be exactly the same, but they would be required to have those spaces as per city code.
Okay.
So that's my justification for coming up with that number.
Yeah, because they're almost in the motor business district.
So can I think you have another comment, but can I get you to restate what your motion and
my motion
condition was
to approve the conditional use permit with the condition that 104 parking spaces, off-street parking spaces, be provided within a quarter mile of the facility.
Okay. Steve, did you have another comment?
Well, I was only going to try and reiterate the fact that justifying our decision, I suppose, but in our packet that we received on April 25th, it talked about Title IV, Chapter 5 and 6 of the City Code, and it said that at the proposed maximum enrollment of 300 students and 44 faculty would be 104 total spaces. At that time, we made the decision that it wouldn't have quite the impact because we had numbers from the city showing that where the parking spots kind of were, but that didn't include the lunch hour, and again we don't have the students there now when they did the 12:30 assessment of the checking for the noontime busyness downtown parking there, but I think that a higher number would be
Higher than 104?
no, higher than 47.
Oh, okay.
Higher than 47 would probably be a fair number to work towards, just because of the impact that those businesses right in that general area, their parking area, that students will have to find parking, right downtown, and it has a huge impact on the businesses downtown.
See, I think that the initial information came up with 47, but the concern was it didn't address noon hour, so that number may have gone up. The second round, the number stayed at 47, but it was during the off-season, so I think the number was low again. So my position is the 47 needs to be a little more, but I don't know that we received anything that would substantiate a buffer that would drive it to more than double of what we had. So I guess I'd be in favor of your motion, with the exception that I think our condition now is actually imposing too much. Who hasn't commented yet on that? Do we want to keep talking about this, or ask for a second, or Lorraine?
I have a comment, and this is just based on a couple of people I've known who are downtown business people and who drove to work. They would choose to park outside of the central business district up into, up towards the high school so that they could leave that space open for a potential customer to come in. And, on one hand, that's very courteous that you don't want your customers to have to walk a long distance, but there are already business people putting pressure on the residential neighborhoods in addition to what I see with the high school kids parking in the residential neighborhoods. I used to be one of those downtown parkers. I now live in town and I bike or walk down to my office, but it's definitely, we're already at capacity, and certainly once you factor in the school year, because there is a drastic difference. I have my office at the center of Moscow's known universe. I'm at the corner of 3rd and Main, and so I get to really, and I get to see where the parking is, where the parking isn't, and there's a whole lot of parking right now. And it can be very hard to find a space once August and September roll, especially once the cold weather rolls around. That's when it's really going to hit. So
Do you feel that this new information warrants more than double the extra?
Yes. I'm generally not in favor of this use coming into downtown, because I think it would be more appropriate in a little bit further out where there would be parking for these students. I think that the students' parents would be happier that their kids weren't walking in from Jackson Street, especially because students aren't like business people, and music students especially, they're going to be going to their practice rooms at all hours if they're like the music students I went to college with. And I think that there's just rational safety reasons for having this use be located someplace a bit different.
Mr. Chair, just also, the City Council has says that it is a use that is permitted conditionally if you mitigate what the impact is. So saying that it shouldn't belong in this area, that's not your decision. It is permitted conditionally, and you're specifically supposed to address the parking issue, which most of you are dealing with.
And you beat me to the punch on that, so my follow-up question to you was going to be, if from your opinion, there really isn't an extra amount that we could actually add to this that would satisfy a car count for you.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that was brought up at the hearing, and that we haven't really talked about tonight, and that is the bicycle parking spots that I think would mitigate some of those the car parking. And I think that it's appropriate that we bring that issue to light here, because the students have the right to ride bicycles instead of taking a car. And so if we were to take into account that some of those students would be riding bicycles or walking to school rather than the cars, I think that
they would, and if I remember right, the 47 would actually have dropped in both of these counts.
Down by 10.
But if I remember the discussion right, and this last winter was a good example of that, the best times to ride your bike are the times that school's not in session. So even though we're a big biking community in general, I think the reason we kind of discounted that was because it may or may not be a fair reflection of a credit to reduce that amount, because
total school year.
Yeah, because once you hit October, September's probably good, but October, definitely not. November, December, January, February, and then depending on how our spring is, that one's really and a 10-to-1 or a 5-to-1, and that was a hard one to justify.
Well, and I feel too, Steve, that we're looking at the number of required off-street parking places. We're not asking for one per student or one per faculty. We're just asking for a given amount. Well, those other people have to get there somehow. So they're either they're already, I think,
It's already
getting
kind of
credit
built
for walking or bicycling. And I want to make it clear that I think it's terrific to have the students downtown. I think they add vibrancy and they add a lot to our community. My concern is the impact on the business community in the downtown area.
Should we discuss this further before I ask for a second?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I might clarify, the phasing that was originally proposed, that was not included in your motion?
That would stay in place.
Okay, so the same 50% and
Correct.
50%. Okay. Just want to clarify.
So really, the only difference, for further clarification, between what was approved the first time and what your motion is now, is that instead of having 47 stalls provided, you're asking for 104, and that those 104 have to be within a quarter mile, not a half a mile.
Correct. Everything else stays the same.
So that's the motion. Do I have a second? Not seeing a second, that motion fails. So, does someone have an alternate motion?
I'm happy to move that we consider the new information. I'm happy to move that we readopt what we came up with before. Having considered the new information that was proposed, that was presented by public staff.
Marshall?
Well, since my motion failed, I would be able to support that motion, except the concern over the half mile or quarter mile. I think that figure was a little bit arbitrary to come up with, and when I realize how far a half mile is out, I think it just doesn't make any sense to me to go a half mile out.
I kind of agree. Without making the motion myself, I would be inclined to approve the CUP with the number that keeps coming up, because quite frankly, we don't know how to change it. But I completely agree that the half mile should be changed to quarter mile, so that 47 or something closer than 104 should be within that half or that quarter mile radius.
Mm-hmm.
Question. Is that CJ's parking lot within a quarter mile? The one that there's excess parking that possibly could be used?
Are you referring to the?
I'm sorry, the new St. Andrews parking lot on Jackson.
Got you. In the original hearing, I had distances. Let me see if I've got the original documentation here.
I don't recall it showing a half-mile circle.
I believe the total walking distance was roughly 900 linear feet. So depending on if you're traveling as a crow flies or traveling down the city streets would determine. But it would be approximately within that overall distance. Bill's
So
pulling
that
up on the
would,
computer right now.
that Jackson parking lot would be within that quarter mile?
It would be a comfortable walk, correct?
Was that a suggestion, or was it a formal
Well,
proposal?
that was my motion, because you were asking for motion was to just
Right.
readopt what we had adopted.
Okay, so I guess technically we need to follow up on that. We have a motion to approve the CUP with the same conditions as before. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
We have a second. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
I have a question
Okay,
to the lady.
go ahead.
Is that within the half mile or the quarter mile? Did we change it to the
It was
quarter
the
mile?
half mile.
It was
No,
within the half
It was
mile.
it was the same as
Nothing
before.
changed.
It was exactly the
changed.
same, so nothing changed.
Nothing changed, right? Okay.
So, yes?
If I may respond to the question, it is exactly a quarter mile to those parking lots, as the crow flies.
So it would fit within that.
I think you ought to do a roll call.
Let's do that. The motion that's up and seconded is the approval of the CUP with 47 additional stalls, the other conditions the same, within a half a mile of the location. We'll go right down the line.
No.
No.
Yes. No.
No.
So it fails. So, third time's a charm. Do I have another motion? I can make a motion, can I not?
You can.
Okay. I would like to make a motion that we approve the CUP with 47 stalls, based on the fact that that's what city staff came up with both times. The other condition stays the same, but we make a change that the 47 stalls be provided within a quarter mile of the new facility. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. We'll roll call again.
Aye.
Aye.
No. Aye.
No.
That's 4-2, and it passes. So I believe that ends this part of the meeting. Do we need to address the relevant criteria and standards?
I
Or
think
can we,
I would move to adopt the relevant criteria and standards as, what's the date on this?
As adopted.
As adopted April 25th with that one amendment on that distance. If the board can approve that, we will modify it for the chair's signature.
okay, so since that was my motion, I would like to make the motion that Bill just stated. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye. Aye.
and it's unanimous.